Can I build the coolest Ork Knight in all of Warhammer 40k? Today we're doing something different. I'm not doing my usual 24-hour challenge. Not going to do this. This is going to be a lot of time to do this, but it's going to look awesome. I'm going to be kit bashing the Restus Knight Archaean and a Morkanaut. Between the two, I think this will make an awesome Ork Knight. I don't have a plan for this. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to pick up stuff, see what the vibe takes me, and just sort of glue stuff on places and see what happens. Okay, so I've got both the kits out first. I've got the Morkanaut and the Archaean, the Restus Knight kit. So I'll start off with the actual Knight kit itself. Now, the Knight kit is actually a lovely kit. It's the first Knight I've actually ever assembled myself. And to be fair, it was pretty self-explanatory. The instructions were really good, and it was something I could really get myself into. Now, here I wanted to actually assemble the main frame of the Knight first. This is basically both the legs. And the legs actually turned out to be pretty easy themselves. Effectively, I just wanted to make sure I cleaned up all the parts really well, making sure that the joints all go together nice and seamless, so that it's very easy to clean up later on. So the assembly here on the legs, I really tried to make sure that I left some room and some space here for some orky bits and gubbins later on, to make sure that it can really read as a knight. Then I just jumped on and made his little crotch thing, which the legs will go onto, so I can glue them on, and that will look super awesome. Then I wanted to make sure he had some little feet, so I just made his feet and glued, and basically had them ready to pose the knight later on, so I could glue the feet on. So I got the feet together and just made sure that the spacings were nice and made sure that it all lined up on the base, so then glued them in place. After that, I started on the torso. The torso, again, was really self-explanatory, really good kit here, right, guys? So ultimately, I've really enjoyed building the torso itself, because it was literally like 4 or 5 parts, which I really didn't expect it to be. I expected it to be a lot more complex here, but ultimately I built it and made sure I left a lot of space to have all the ork bits go on later on, and then just made sure I had the arm fittings on there for the pieces that are going on later on. But next piece that I really wanted to try and work on was the arms. So the arms here, obviously the Morkanaut has that amazing claw, and I really want to use that claw on the knight because it's scaled really nicely, and I think this is going to suit the knight really, really well. So I started off by just clipping out all of the bits that I needed for the arm, and I wanted to make sure I have the rocket pods on there as well because it looks great. So effectively here, guys, the Morkanaut is a very old kit. There's plenty of horrible mold lines and all that sort of thing to remove, but ultimately it's something I could definitely fix. So it just took a while to get all the pieces to actually fit together and mold together. Now, the thing is, this kit actually isn't too bad to assemble itself. It's just I'm really finicky about gaps and textures on surfaces, so we want to make sure it was perfect. And after the arm itself was built, I glued it in place. This was nice and easy. I basically got rid of the little pegs that are on the internal shoulder, and then glued it in place there and just made sure I had a nice flush fit. I'd recommend, if you're doing this yourself though, is to not glue the frame of the shoulder on before you take off those pegs that you'd normally have your knight glue your arm onto. And it's going to make this a lot easier. Rest now, my sweet prince, and dry and set. Next thing to work on is the top hatch. So effectively the top hatch, I really wanted to use the awesome like electrical circuitry from the Morkanaut kit itself. It's got a really nice big antenna that looks like lightning might hit, like a lightning rod sort of thing. And then I started to put the ork bits on there as well. So like the actual like belt, which I've used a belt from the Morkanaut itself, so it all works nicely and ties together. This took a little bit of effort to glue on, but I basically shaved the areas where I wanted to connect it, so it's a nice flat connection, and glued it in place. Next was the head. I basically used the actual Morkanaut head, but I just glued the actual face in a different area. So I basically rotated the head at a certain angle so it just fits into all the nooks and crannies of the top hatch itself, and then glued it in place there. And after that, I just reinforced it with some more glue in the areas that there's really solid connections, and then tried to make sure that it was all in place. And then after that, I just glued the face on. I shaved the back of the face because obviously it comes with a little mold that it would settle into the old face area, but I shaved it off and glued it in place, which was nice and easy. After that, I started to work on the nice big chainsword arm. The big chainsword arm was actually not too bad itself either. I basically just clipped out all the parts and followed the instructions, guys. This is not too much rocket science here. I do add some ork gubbins later on to make it look more orky, but for now, I just make sure I assemble the kit as per the instructions, because that's a super important part of kit bashing as well. Like, the instructions from both kits are really important to follow for each individual piece that you're doing, and then when you're going to mold them together later on, that's where your imagination and a little bit of imagination comes into play as well. So once this is all in place and once all the arm is assembled, I make sure to glue the little like pipes that go from the elbow to the wrist, make sure it all lines up nicely, and then start to glue ork gubbins everywhere. And once the arm's set in place, which is nice and easy because I just follow the instructions, I then thought about how I'm going to glue the knight on, and also thinking about the position of the knight and where I want the pieces to be gluing on to be glued, to make sure that it catches the eye in the nice areas. And you want to create like little circles where people look around the model, so try to provoke little areas of interest that people might not normally expect. And I made sure I clipped out every single ork bit from the Ork Knight kit that can be glued onto a flat surface and glued it onto the knight somewhere. Now, this is just down to your preference. I decided everywhere. So I found the little sharp bits from the Ork Knight kit, which is one of the little shoulder pad areas, and glued it onto the end of the chainsword to make it look like it has a little housing. And after that, I clipped out the little ork glyphs, glued them everywhere, gave it a little spotting eye, which is also from the Ork Knight as well, and then made sure it all looks nice and tied together. And as you can see, guys, this is starting to come together now. And after that, I glue the torso onto the legs and leave it to dry, ready for some pictures. But yeah, I think it's looking pretty cool. So we have an Ork Knight. I think this guy looks pretty cool. I think the Ork Knight kit actually worked really well here with, like, you know, the antenna to have some warp energy coming in and all that sort of thing. Alongside the face, actually slotted really nicely into those, you know, gaps. Put some extra guns on there, gave him a nice big custom Mega Blaster on his chainsword, which is going to look awesome when it's painted. And yeah, so I'm going to get some paint on it now. Again, I don't really have a plan here. I'm going to mix up a few of the different orc tribes here. I think I'm going to put like some Bad Moons bits on there, some Evil Suns, and I do want some of those classic goth checkers. So it's going to look a little bit mix and match, but it's a knight and it's an orc, so why not? So without further ado, I'm going to go get this guy primed and let's get painting. It's all primed. Let's start on the metallics. I'm basically using dark gunmetal from Vallejo. I'm just going to go around it, overbrush, stipple, create some textures, and just make sure all of the metallics are covered. This has a slightly bluish hue, which is going to help us out later on with a couple of steps that we're going to try and make this metal a little bit more interesting. Then after that, I'm going to pick up a brighter silver. This could be any silver. I believe I used Vallejo silver for this, and just again, stippling, creating textures, little scratches, and all that sort of good stuff. And it's going to make it look super awesome. And it's going to start really bright, but by the time we've done the selective inks and all that sort of thing, this is going to be a lot darker. So just as a pre-warning. Then I masked it all up and just airbrushed it with Gory Red from Vallejo. This is just very simple. The masking actually worked out really well here. I had a little bit of overspill on the areas I didn't cover properly, but that's more of a user error rather than the actual product itself. But once I've removed all of that, all of the metallic bits were silver and all of the red bits were red without any overspray. So it was a really nice start to the process, really. And after this, I got out my Scarlet Red and just started building transitions. Now, I basically start with Scarlet Red really diluted and hit areas where I think the light is going to reflect. This probably goes over the course of about 3 or 4 layers, but it's all very simple. It's all very large areas. So all you have to do is make sure that you're introducing texture and also making sure that you're introducing the light placement of where you want it to be. This is not how it's going to look in the end, because with inks and all that sort of thing, it's going to make it a little bit more different. Then after that, we go over with Ice Yellow, and then again with the Scarlet Red. This adds a lot of vibrance to this piece and actually makes the red read a lot more, because obviously you can go over with the Scarlet Red 1,000 times. You might not have the full covering layer of Scarlet Red because it starts from a darker base. And as you can see on the panels there, that's how it looks in the end, and I was really happy with this. Then I go with some hot orange and chill out. Then I go in with some black ink into the areas where it sort of meets with the darker panels so that it, you know, blends together and so that you don't have a very large flat piece of metal. So here's a really important step. And then after that, I pick up some dark turquoise ink, which I'm going to be using Snake Green Express color, and just basically going over all of the metallics, not all of it, but like selective areas. And then I'm doing that exact same thing again with magenta ink. Now, this is going to create this sort of oil slick look for the metallic, and it works out really, really well. I do it on a lot of pieces. I did it on a Wazdacker recently for my friend, and it worked out really well. So, really happy with all this stuff so far. How it ends up looking when it's all lovely, sexy, and finished. And then next, we're going to go on to metallics. So, effectively, with this, I'm using tin bits from the Vallejo range, or tinny bits, I think it's called. And basically, this is just like a dark, like coppery color, which is going to work really nicely on the trim here. So I go with a slightly thicker than usual layer and go over with one coat and then again with another thinner coat. And one thing you want to make sure of, because it was quite hot here, so I sometimes got some textures on some of the smooth surfaces. So just make sure that you're, being wary of that and make sure you're thinning your paints down when you need to. And then after that, I get some thinned down turquoise paint and just go into all the little rivets to create some sort of, oxidization. This came up a little bit darker than I wanted, but it was fine in the end. After that, I go with some ice yellow over the yellow areas and then go over with a really thin layer of moon yellow. And after that, I grime it all up with Cygor brown that's like quite heavily diluted. And then I just stipple some yellow back on there. And this little process didn't take too long at all for yellow. And to be fair, I would recommend it. It's quite quick. And it's a bit basic, but it works. Then after that, I get sponge and get some dried bark, and then just stipple it all on. Another option for that is dark rust. Just want a dark brown color here just to create some, weathering. So once my sponge has gone over all the areas, quite happy with how that all turned out. The weathering has actually worked out really well on this. And now time for some freehand. Now checkers, I'm not very good at. So this was a very painful and arduous process I'm not going to show you all of, but I managed to do it in the end. And then after that, I spotted some areas I might have missed and fixed it all up. Next, I'm going to go on to a skull. So this one was a little bit more excited about. So basically, I start off with like a skull area. I basically based all of the things I'm doing here off of the transfer sheet. Yes, I could use transfers, but I like a little bit of a challenge here. So I basically built up the area and made sure I had a nice skull-looking thing. Added some eyes, and then added some selective shading with some grays and all that sort of thing, just to make it really read as this has just been painted on by an orc. After that, there's a large arm panel here that I wanted something on. So I did a bone because I saw it on the transfer sheet and I thought it was a good idea. So I start off with a nice stem in the middle, and then go on to the 2 notches on the bone on top. This is a very simple freehand design that you could try out yourself. If you want to try to look for some inspiration for a freehand design and you want to try and start doing freehand, just have a look at the transfer sheets. The transfer sheets are actually a pretty good gauge of what you could be doing, and they're all relatively simple most of the time. After that, I'm going to do another skull. This time it's going to have some horns. So I go with some really thin down black paint and apply this layer by layer, building it up over time. And then add some teeth and add some, a jawline. Then I go in with some eyes. A few layers of white here will just sort you right out. And then I give them some nose holes as well, so that my skull looks like it had a nose at some stage. Because I think that's quite an important process of here as well. And after that, I just highlight the black with some gray a little bit, and we're fine. We get the sponge back out, guys. I'm going to go back over with the dry bark, stippling all over the freehand designs we've done already. This all look like the freehand actually belongs in this universe. It looks a lot more natural. And this is how it looks so far. Quite happy with how this is working out so far. I mean, it's one of those things where the reds turned out really well. The yellow was a little bit basic, but I'm actually quite okay with it now that it's all sort of tied together. And then we can start looking at some OSL. So OSL, I literally just used ivory through the airbrush and just built that up over a few layers. Really took my time here. Make sure you didn't get any spider webbing or anything like that. You want this to be a really nice, smooth layer. And I'll go over everything that I think is going to glow. So once I've done that, I get my fluorescent green out, which is from the fluoro range. And I just go for a few layers, a few passes, nice and gentle. Make sure you're building that up over the existing bright colors. And this effect was awesome, by the way. This doesn't take long at all. Like this probably took about 20 minutes to do all the OSL, including the highlight afterwards. And I go over it, few layers by layers. And this adds such a really interesting dynamic to this piece. Now, I know that people don't like airbrushes sometimes, but for things like this, just to add a level of depth to this piece, it really, really helped out. And yeah, it was super easy, so I would recommend trying it out. After that, I grabbed some yellow. It was moon yellow. I just did a few dots on big, eyeball things, and a few dots on the lanterns and all that sort of thing, just to make it look like it has a central point that this green glow is coming out of. And after that, I just did some freehand on some rockets, and we're pretty much there. So once I did that, I just went around and just did some bit more weathering here and there on some pieces, like re-weathered the freehand on the rockets, did some speckle dry brush pieces on some places, and then we are finished. And we are basically on to action shots, guys. So let's see how this big guy turned out. And there we have it, an Ork Knight. So I'm really happy with him, guys. Really, really happy with how this guy turned out. It's a cool little project to get going. I was really enjoyed doing some kit bashing and all that sort of things, which was super, super fun to do. So if you like this sort of content, please drop a like and subscribe. I have beginner content, I have painting challenges, and I have rankings galore. So if you want to get involved with that stuff, drop a like and subscribe, and I love that. So yeah, if you want to see any more challenges or any kit bashes, drop it in the comments below. I do reply and read every single one. Open to suggestions with new kit bashes. I've got Mortarion somewhere, which I'm going to make a Night Lords Mortarion, which is going to be at some point in the future. Because all of my Chaos factions all tie into my Night Lords, because it means I can cross, you know, change and chop and change. So I can have Night Lord Plague Marines in my CSM, for example. So that'd be super fun. So guys, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for watching. And much love. Bye-bye.